Welcome back to the channel, guys. We're out at the large greenhouse and we've been doing a little bit of work and we've got a ton more to do. We've got a lot of planting done, but we got to use all of this free material that we acquired to heat our greenhouse the entire winter. We are done with it. It is warm enough out. We've got about 50 degrees overnight. We saw about 45 last night and that was the lowest temp we've got in the foreseeable. So I've been taking these leaf bags and I've been throwing them in a compost ring. I have a whole bunch of this fencing and I'm making compost rings. We're gonna do a bunch of experimenting with these compost rings, several different types of ideas for composting with the rings. So I'm gonna get all these leaf bags out of here and then we're going to take the second layer of fencing out and we're going to start tearing into that compost pile and see what it looks like. All right, guys, since I really don't have to take a leak right now, I'm gonna use this urea right here to inoculate those leaf bags. I'm gonna take about 2 handfuls of this pure nitrogen. We use this to inoculate our wood chips and all of our compost for compost heating in our little 6x12 compost heated greenhouse. So this stuff does work and it is pure nitrogen. So I'm gonna throw a couple handfuls on there. I just wanted to reiterate that we're inoculating these leaves as we go, and I have my hose out here and we're gonna spray them down. Let's jump down here, let's check this out. We got the pitchfork out. I just kind of wanted to break some of this down here, give it a nice good chunk. Some of it looks a little dried out, but top of the pile we're sitting about 100 degrees. It's hard to get a focus there. Sitting about 100 degrees in that. We're gonna pull this thermometer out. I'm seeing a bit of dry material from being protected with all of our layers, but I'm seeing some really warm, nice moist compost coming out of here. Very cool to see all that fungal activity just breaks right down. It's super warm in there. Yeah, it's getting hotter. That is very cool stuff. So we're gonna kind of break this down. I'm going to use these buckets. We're gonna take buckets here. So we're just gonna set the bucket right up on the side and we will be able to take our pitchfork and shovel them all right in. We're going to make a few rings just like our leaf bag ring. Check these out real quick. This is maybe like a 3-4 foot ring right here. This is just some welded wire, nice thick stuff, not that green coated thin gauge, 14 gauge or whatever. I'm not sure if my gauges, don't scrutinize me on that. This is some thick stuff. It's not cattle panel fencing, but it's a mid-grade stuff. So it definitely has some consistency and rigidity to it. I used it to hold this whole pile together. So it holds its own weight. So I'm going to use one that is just a pile of all semi-broken down outer layer wood chips. We're gonna get all of that stuff that was dry and not breaking down. We're gonna load it up with water. We're gonna throw nitrogen and we're gonna try and super cook it. So next up here, we've got this perforated tubing. So this is going to sit kind of like this. We're gonna kind of just leave them, and I'm gonna have these two sticking out of the top of the compost pile. I just wanted to run through this. These rings are about the same size. Wanted to just give the specs and show everybody what the idea was going forward. This is just a more simple method of naturally providing oxygen to the whole of the compost pile and helping it break down a little faster. So I'm going to cover both of these with tarps so they do break down even faster, so they hold moisture content. I'm going to get all of that situated and then we will be back. All right, guys, I have peeled a lot of this material back and I took basically the whole 2 foot outer shell of non-broken down material. You can see where I got into the really broken down material. It got so hot and it began to dry out and stuff, and it has fungus all over it. We've got all of this really broken down stuff where it was really hot in the center up top here. Very good, very broken down material, and I can't wait to get to the dead center of that. I have just restuck this in here. It's sitting just under 100, about 98, 99 degrees. So I just stuck that back in there after I took all this apart. So that is really quite amazing for not having any movement in this pile. This pile did not move. We didn't turn it or anything. It just stayed and did its thing. So we got so much free material. We collected leaf bags for free. We got all of these wood chips for free, 14 cubic yards, about 2.5 truckloads. So we're taking all of those free resources, all these leaf bags. I was just watering these in. I just left the hose running on all these. I'm going to inoculate them again with nitrogen in this top layer. We're going to throw tarps over all of these. This is our non-aerated compost ring. We got a little bit of green layer. We built 2 or 3 green layers in with those wood chips so we can actually get some good burn on the base of this. We've got about 6 inches of wood chips and about 2 inches of green matter, and we staggered that together because I wanted the base of this compost pile to cook and get hot. And it's hard to get the bottom layers hot because it's so close to the ground. It's always losing heat to the ground. It doesn't have good oxygen flow. So I want to get all of that situated and get all of that cooking hot, and that is going to lead to the entire compost pile cooking all the way through. As it breaks down, it'll already be hot at the base, and the whole thing will cook as a whole inside the tarp, basically acting like a bag. So we can get the best possible chance of keeping the same moisture content through the entire pile and getting a very, very good breakdown of all of the material inside and out. Let's jump over to our second ring here. So we've got our aerated compost pile here. This is not a non-induction. We don't have any solar fans or anything running on this. This is just natural draw. So we've got all that perforated tubing. We buried it down there, and we kind of left it open and put some like sticks and some of our leaf bags down at the bottom. It had a bunch of little air gaps down at the bottom so we can have a little bit of oxygen flow and a transfer of all of those gases that come off of compost. So I just kind of threw this together, got it stuck in, put a couple loads of wood chips on top of the 2 to 3 inches of green matter on top of 6 inches of wood chips. So we're doing the same thing throughout both of these, and we're going to try and inoculate the base as best as we can. So I put all of the green material. I will not stagger green material in the top. I will inoculate with the little pellets because they run through really nicely with the watering. So one heavy water after this thing is full, I will have some really hot compost, and hopefully these will cook pretty good. I'm going to put a tarp over both of these, aerated and non-aerated. So I think this one's going to cook faster, but we will come back in a few weeks and check these out. In a true sense of Jean Pain heating, we are reusing every aspect of this compost heating system. We're going to use these leaves to create leaf mold or leaf compost. We're going to tarp these in to create a nice bag effect on them, nice and hot, humid, and hold the moisture content, help those break down a lot faster after inoculation. This is going to be a fungal dominated compost with wood chips. You can see all the fungus breaking down the inner core of that actual pile there. So both of these will be fungally dominated, and I want to cook these down really quickly, see how fast I can break them down, and then go feed all of our berries and trees before they really start to fruit here. So that is pretty well all of the material outside the Jean Pain heating system that we're reusing. So all of this fence material starting from the outside, leaf bags getting reused, all of the cardboard is getting put at the base, all the paper bags and stuff the leaves were in, that breaks down all the same, perfectly recyclable. We're reusing all the fencing for rings, and we're going to reuse some of this fencing. You can take your fence, and this is full of leaves and junk, but you give yourself maybe a 2.5 to 3 foot ring, cut this up, bend them together, and once you cut this, you can make some really good hooks. Those are very strong, and they make perfect tomato cages. We've got these tomato cages pretty well the same strength as all of these cages that we're using to hold all of our compost. That is just one quick little tip there. You can make your own tomato cages when you run out. You can see we've got about 20 in this row, and we've got about 40 or 50 more tomato cages, some of them planted up, some of them not. We've got a lot to get going on, so I wanted to break all this compost down and get this cooking before we actually started planting more stuff, because I've got Nanking cherries and lots of perennial stuff to plant out there. So I want to have a good food source within a month or so. Hopefully we can get this broken down in about a month, so I can feed all of those plants, get them a nice good base and a good top dressing to feed all of those food forest items, and all of the food forest items that are growing, all of our pear trees, they're going to produce apple trees, cherry trees, everything alike. We're creating food for our garden, we're creating food for our food forest, all those annuals, all those perennials, and we're recycling everything. So before I let everybody go, I wanted to touch on all of the main topics here. So we're throwing nitrogen in, we're adding nitrogen because it's not going to break down, it's going to be cold, it's going to be anaerobic if you're just using all of those recycled wood chips. So you want to add a little bit of nitrogen to bump that heat up and add a lot of water. We are soaking these wood chips with water. You can see how wet these are. We got these soaked in here really good. They're almost like a wet sponge, like compost should be. All of those leaves were, some of them were dry, most of them were very, very damp. because they were breaking down also inside their own bag. So we should be able to get a good breakdown on all of these piles as long as they are wet enough, as long as they have enough nitrogen to react with the carbon in the pile. And you don't need as much nitrogen as you do. Think of it like this: your carbon is your fuel you're trying to get to react with nitrogen to burn and create heat. So the more carbon you have to have a little bit more nitrogen to bump that up. So if you have a massive pile like this, you're going to need a lot of nitrogen to dump on this, to react and to activate this and get it really hot. So getting all of these smaller piles hot, a couple handfuls of our urea here will definitely do the trick. Get them cooking hot. So the easiest part about all of this is it's not that bad to be able to just slip this ring up, and I can basically take it up like a little sheath and flip it over, put it in a new spot, and this whole pile will just break down. We'll take all the unbroken down material, flip it into the new ring, and then we will take all of that broken down material and top dress all of our tomatoes and keep all of that baking sun from baking the dirt at the base of our tomatoes where the roots are seeking for moisture. So in the true Jean Pain sense, we wanted to reuse everything that we possibly could, and we are succeeding. There is absolutely no waste from this heating system, and we heated our greenhouse the entire winter here. I'm gonna climb up on my ladder for a nice bird's eye view. I'd like to thank everybody for watching this and checking this out. I've got a lot of work to do. This is a work in progress, and there will be a lot more coming on all of this, updates as I break it down and actually reveal the material that I used. All of my drain tile and my center pole with copper wrapped, that all of this solar power was powering to pull the heat off of that compost and push it into my greenhouse in the dead of winter. I'd like to thank everybody once again, and thank you to my subscribers. If anybody has any suggestions on different styles of composting with rings, give me them and I will use them. I will build a couple more rings at your guys' suggestion, and I will inoculate them, get them going, and we will see how long and what's the best method for composting with a ring. And I think aerating it is obviously going to be the best method, but we'll see. I'm throwing a lot of green stuff in there just to get a good bump start and get all of that going. It's nice and warm outside, so we shouldn't have any problem getting all of these active and rolling.